Yeah. Unknown Brain. Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
I know that I gotta stay away from all your games. I know that I found somebody else to love me one day. You'll realize the grass ain't greener on the other side. No, you did me dirty for the last time, so now I gotta say goodbye. So now I gotta say goodbye.
All right. How's everybody doing on this Friday evening or Friday morning, whatever time it is, wherever you are? My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. You know, I have to start a little early because there's just so much going on in this case. I'm going to have to start a little early in order to get it all out there. Well, I hope that you guys are having an awesome day, the beginning to the weekend. Rondi Potter, how's it going? Hope you're doing okay. Hope you're doing wonderful. Wonderful. You know, like I said, there's so much going on in this case that we just had a drop. The Syray testimony, and I will be going over that. But first, I want to drop a lot of stuff on you, a lot of information, and I hope that you're ready for it. Are you ready for it? I hope you are, because it's about to get heavy. It's about to get heavy up in here. Let me silence my phone before people start blowing me up. You know how that goes, right? And people might have not got this notification because it was scheduled at 6. And they might not have gotten it. But regardless, here we go. I'm going to start with this video, and then we're going to go on from here. So I hope you're ready for the good stuff. Here we go.
Inside the Idaho murders, you have to go outside the state to DeSales University in Pennsylvania, where Brian Kohberger got his master's in criminology in 2021. But was he studying to catch criminals or become one? DeSales University, in response to our questions, issued new statements. AJ Janovel shares what he learned.
There's another crime scene house connected to Brian Kohberger, some 2,500 miles away from where the 4 University of Idaho students were murdered. DeSales University showcases the crime scene house on Taylor Drive and its hands-on training for students considering a criminal justice degree. The faculty includes leading experts in the field, And there are internships created specifically for DeSales students at the Regional Forensic Lab, area police departments, and the local coroner's office. So when you hear Kohberger studied under Dr. Catherine Ramsland at DeSales, who is considered one of the nation's leading authorities on serial killers, and that part of his coursework included a survey asking criminals how they planned their crimes and how it felt to commit them, it might give you a real Dexter moment. Showtime's fictional crime scene expert who doesn't just solve murders, he commits them too.
With Kohberger, it's easy to start asking yourself, did this person really want to be a member of law enforcement? Or was this just the safest and closest way they could get to whatever kind of demons or fantasies that they had been fighting for decades that then eventually came to this?
But that would
Can you imagine becoming a police officer solving your own crime? I mean, if he would have been with Moscow Police, or Jesus, Pullman Police Department, maybe I think they were aiding in trying to find the perpetrator, but that would have been weird if he would have been on the police department and then ended up being the killer. That's just too much of a stretch for me. But I'm with you on this one, Salty. They did a great series on this.
be a gross misunderstanding of what criminal justice really teaches students, according to crime experts and academics. Mary Ellen O'Toole is both.
So forensic science is based on the natural sciences. So our students study things that include physics and math and chemistry and biology. It's a science degree, and they're trained to use science in their evaluation of crime scenes. Criminal justice is a social science. It's a great degree, but it doesn't require the types of natural sciences that a forensic degree requires.
Dr. O'Toole is a former FBI profiler who now heads up the forensic science program at George Mason University. She says there's absolutely no data that suggests someone with a criminal justice or forensic major is more likely to commit a crime. Instead, the common denominators she finds in her classroom tend to be curiosity and compassion in the face.
I'm with her on that. You know, all the theories of, you know, he was a criminal justice major, he was a PhD student, he was this, he was that. So, throw his schooling out of it, bro. Quit putting the labels on him as if he was some psychological genius that he would have been so smart he couldn't get caught. I mean, honestly. Granted, 51% of all murders go unsolved in the U.S., but I think this one was so high profile that they were going to catch him, whoever it was. Might have taken a while, but they were going to catch him. Well, understand, I'm not saying that the schooling didn't add to his knowledge. I'm saying, you know, just because he went to school as a forensics expert, they don't teach you how to kill. And they don't necessarily teach you unless you get into the higher levels of the investigative process. I went through, you know, the first semester of my stuff this year. We learned about investigative techniques. I learned about that probably the second or third semester as well. But they don't go as in depth as you possibly would think. A lot of people have that CSI effect, believing that, you know, if you're going to school for this stuff, then they're teaching you what the other side is going to do. And that's not necessarily true. If you do go and you study serial killers like Bundy and all the other great ones, you know, you're going to learn more from YouTube about those than you probably will in a textbook. And I'm only being honest here. I'm not trying to start an argument or anything like that. I'm just saying that narrative has gotten old already. You know, that since he was this or since he was that, And people have already given them the damn doctorate, and some creators, which was not true. He was not complete with his doctorate. He was studying for his doctorate. He was in the first semester of his doctorate program. So he was not even complete with that yet. So to say that he was a doctorate student is false because he was not complete with the doctorate yet.
Of the unimaginable.
To most of us who have never committed a murder, we don't understand it. And our curiosity causes us to say, what happened? How did that person become so divergent in what they've done and what they decided to do, how they hurt or murdered that person? I got to learn more about that. And so to me, when I talk to my own students and my own experience growing up, my students tell me the same thing. They grew up wanting to know the whys and the hows.
So what did Kohberger learn? We asked DeSales if he would have gotten hands-on training like the kind seen in the crime scene house video.
Well, I'm going to answer that for you, Salty. If you really are I'm not saying that you don't learn those techniques, okay? It could be in the next level, in the master's level program or whatever. As they were showing the house, at the very beginning of this, criminal justice is just that. You're learning more about the court process. You're learning about the laws. You're learning about the judicial system. You're learning more about the attributes of what it takes to becoming like law enforcement, a corrections officer, or something of that nature. You're not really focusing on just one attribute of it. So it's not just about learning the investigative part of it. There's tons to go into this. So it's very high demand and high velocity in a lot of different areas, Like she just said, most people get drawn into the criminal justice arena because they want to know why. They want to know why, just like we all want to know why. It's sad that he was in that line of work or line of study because that's the fictional part of what people understand as criminal justice is just trying to hunt down serial killers, and that's not it. That's not the biggest portion either. It's just a very minuscule when you get into the forensic pathology, the forensic psychology of it, which I just completed, and I got a 101.4 for my term grade. So I kind of know what I'm talking about as well, and I'm not saying that you don't or anybody in the chat, but what I'm saying is it's such a small, minuscule part. People get delusional when it comes to understanding this whole process. You know what I mean? It's not just one little part of it. Let me continue on.
In a statement, the school says no. Kohberger was learning remotely. The Masters of Criminal Justice online graduate program is virtual. On-campus labs or environments are not part of the coursework. The crime scene house isn't a part of the Masters of Criminal Justice program. What about him surveying criminals on Reddit with prompts like, why did you choose that victim before making your move? How did you approach the victim? The school says this kind of behavioral study was standard, and Kohberger wasn't working alone. All students enrolled in the Masters of Criminal Justice program are required to complete a capstone research project that is supervised by faculty, and 2 of Kohberger's professors are listed as co-researchers on the survey. There's no argument that Kohberger was a standout at DeSales. A professor who recommended him for the doctorate program at Washington State University described Kohberger as brilliant and one of my best students ever. But O'Toole says studying criminology doesn't mean you'll be a better criminal than, say, someone who reads up on a murder case in the papers or listens to true crime podcasts.
The learning process is not unusual. It really depends on where people are looking for their information. Now, whether it's classroom training or following someone else that's committing the kinds of crimes that you do, does it make you 100% better at what you do? Does it make you 100% more successful? Can you still make mistakes? You can absolutely still make mistakes because there's a lot of emotion that goes into committing a crime. And when you lose control in a crime scene, then you're more likely to make mistakes and leave evidence. And they don't write about that in a textbook.
Coming next month, inside the Idaho murders, we go inside the mind of Brian Kohberger.
So you have things like depression, anxiety, depersonalization, tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. And those also come with visual snow.
From visual snow to new claims of autism. Can Kohberger's state of mind impact the case?
I thought that was very interesting, very, very interesting. Especially what she said at the end. It doesn't make you a better killer. It just gives you the understanding of the criminal process. And I want to go ahead and go over the article or essay that he wrote regarding his fictional scenario for his final, which is indeed interesting, but the same thing applies here. And I'm not trying to defend him or defend anything that many people already have in their mindset. I'm just trying to look at this as objective as possible. And when I'm going to read this, I want you to think of a student, okay? I want you to think of a student. You know, I want you to think of a student writing this and turning this in. So this is the paperwork right here that we're going to go over. As you can see at the top, it says Brian C. Kohberger, Professor Dave Sipe, Criminal Justice 3361 55-2020. So this is his scenario final. It says arriving at the crime scene. The first thing to be done is to block off the crime scene in order to avoid crime scene contamination. And I've also gone over a video sort of like this in the very beginning of this whole stuff. And it's in my library if you want to go check it out, if you want to rummage through all that other Idaho stuff. And I kind of went over all this stuff, and I even gave supporting videos and examples and stuff. So this isn't the first time that I'm talking about this. The first thing to be done is to block off the crime scene in order to avoid crime scene contamination. That's exactly what you do. You keep people out of the scene, minimizes the evidence contamination, though many may be curious to see what occurred. The theory of transfer states that we bring something with us to the crime scene and take something away, thus skewing the crime scene from the original state by contamination. This is because the original state of the crime scene was left by the criminal suspect. A lack of contamination allowed the scene to be a snapshot in time. The curious must be noted and immediately evicted from the scene. So, you know, whenever the police did arrive finally to the 1122 house, I'm sure all this happened. Even if it wasn't this scenario right here, he is right on point as far as to what he's saying. You know, you arrive, you first make sure that there's not a threat to anybody, and then you continue on blocking off the crime scene so that you don't have contamination, because you already would have had contamination in this scenario because of all the people that were walking through the house in the 911 call, as she was asking them to walk upstairs and see if there was any kind of breathing or any kind of motion or movement. So people to be kept out of the scene include unauthorized civilians and any more than the absolute minimum number of law enforcement agents and forensic crime processors. Waiting for backup to arrive, he's putting this in first person. I should stand guard at the scene, preventing these unauthorized people and even holding back eager officers from entering the scene. Verbatim. I must call my immediate supervisor and inform them of the deceased white female who is approximately 35 years of age. So he used a hypothetical woman, deceased white female, and she's approximately 35 years in age. I must obtain an initial search warrant to search the scene. Failing to do so will mean that evidence is inadmissible. And that's so true. Search warrant to search the scene. There's a difference between a search warrant, what you're looking for in that specific search warrant, and what you can see as you're visually seeing these things as you're walking through the house. Now, if you see evidence as you're walking through the house, you don't need a search warrant to identify. Let's say there's weed on the table. Let's say there's a bloody knife right there on the floor, or there's bullet casings or whatever. These are things that you see in the casual combing of the crime scene. So you don't need a search warrant to put those on the inventory because you've already seen them. They're out in the open. This is another reason why holding the personnel from entering is a key. The coroner must be called in order to pronounce the woman dead, and EMS should be called if they were not already called by the patrol officer 15 minutes earlier, as they would have provided emergency care if the woman showed signs of life. As we know, in 1122, there was no sign of life. So EMS was called, but EMS was told to stand down. This would have been important for many reasons. Her livelihood is one reason. But from the stance of a patrol officer or criminal investigator, she may have been given a dying declaration of her attacker when informed of her impending death. In this case, it was not so much. Forensic services are next on the list to call, as they are best equipped to handle the evidence, process it, and ensure that there is not any contamination. Their van also contains the best equipment for forensic investigation. A cursory search of the immediate area should be done, and any observations should be recorded in my field notes to ensure the integrity of the preliminary case report. Officers who are not needed at the residence should ensure that the general area is searched for anything that stands out as well. This includes the area of the trailer park, which contains 62 trailers. So he went into detail in all this, which is perfect. I mean, this is exactly how it's done. He's documenting every little thing he sees, which this is the way it's supposed to be done. If there's anyone in the trailer, they should be moved out and questioned. Does she have kids? I should gather the following information in my notes as the investigation commences, which will later be included in my preliminary case report when the details of the case culminate. The offense, the time of the day, the date, and approximate time of the offense if known. The identification of the victim, the location of the offense, the method of operation if known, and the identification of the officer. So my friend Molly, who I had on panel a couple weeks ago, was talking about whenever the EMS goes in there, they're to document exactly what they see, who was around, what they noticed, was there sign of life, was there any kind of area with blood, did they notice a weapon, did they notice anything out of the ordinary, was there bruising, was there any of these things that go into their notes that later are written up in a summary. Since the offender was not there, I would be unable to record this information initially, and the specifics of the crime won't be known until confirmed by the crime lab. Getting the approximate time is important and can be indicated by rigor mortis, which sets in about 12 hours, or putrefaction about 10 to 20 days. Man, he's getting right into the details of all this. And I'm not glorifying this. Like I told somebody earlier, you know what? I'm going to present both sides, even if I don't agree with everything that was the initial outcome. You know, I'm going to still present it. You know, there's people that only present one side, and if you go against anything else, it's like they don't agree with you, they get upset or whatever. I'm going to present both sides. Equipment I will have on hand for the investigation. So this is the equipment. Once you get to the crime scene and you pull this equipment out to do the further investigation, to be prepared for the crime scene investigation, I must ensure I have a crime toolkit containing the following. So I've also talked about this. I've talked about when you go into the crime scene, you take photos, you take videos, you take measurements, you take all these statistics so that later on you can have all these photos, even if it's of something that doesn't really have any value. You never know if this case goes cold later on. Somebody can be looking at this further down the line and might see something that you didn't catch the first time around. A 35 millimeter camera or digital camera capable of videotaping with an adequate supply of film and power. A portable lighting system to ensure quality photographs and that I do not miss or step over any evidence. Assorted steel tape measures that can reach at least 25 feet. A ruler or other measurement marking devices. Latent fingerprinting equipment. Gloves to protect the scene from contamination. This will enable that I avoid leaving my latent fingerprints. You know, I would like to say that this is a boom on so many levels because people have hung on to this one. This is not a boom. This is part of procedure. There's a difference in a boom and there's part of procedure. You might learn procedure. Would you use that in a crime? Would you use that in possibly understanding, well, I need to wear gloves to protect the scene from contamination of my own fingerprints? So if you're a criminology student, that might be something you learn, to wear gloves. There's also forensic pathologists, there's forensic psychologists, there's forensic psychiatrists, which deal with the mental component versus the evidence that you present at the trial. So there's a lot of different aspects of investigation in a crime. It just doesn't go with what people are wanting to see as if this one person went to school, so therefore he's more capable or least capable of committing these crimes. So that one's a big one for a lot of people, but it's really not. It's part of protocol. If he took it to possibly help himself commit this crime better, then he took a piece of protocol. Does that mean that everything that he learned while he was in college, it taught him how to be a better killer? If that's what you believe that. I myself, at this point, do not believe that any of the stuff that we're seeing made him more aptable to be a better killer or to not be detected or caught, because what ended up happening, woulda, coulda, shoulda, did not happen, and he was caught. So therefore, all the knowledge, all the training, all the book smarts still got him arrested. So therefore, to stand on the ground of his schooling, his degrees, all that doesn't matter at this point. He's in jail, and he's been in jail for 2 years plus. So that's my opinion. Forceps and small tweezers and a pair of scissors. Hell, he could be plucking his eyebrows with that stuff for all you want to know. I mean, if you say he's using this as a playbook, well, forceps and small tweezers, was he plucking his eyebrows? Was he plucking somebody's mustache. I mean, what was he doing with this stuff? I mean, do you see how silly it sounds? We can make something out of nothing if you want. I mean, it's feasible, but all this is procedure. And I'll keep saying that until the very end. All this is procedure. A small saw to take evidence, for example, drywall. As we noticed in Matty Mogan's room, there was a big cutout of drywall. So chances are they used that saw to cut that out. The killer did not use a saw to cut that out. Did he know to? Of course, if we're going to go down that road, he knew to cut that out. Why didn't he cut it out with him on the way out? Do you see how that sounds? I'm not being condescending. I'm not being a smartass, but I'm just telling you, not everything fits the way you want it to fit. And if it does in your mind, that's cool. But I'm just showing you that not everything that is on here is the crime scene protocol of a killer. Filter paper or small swaths for liquid evidence or trace evidence. Did he trace his own evidence? No. Did he look for his own DNA? Did he swab everything after he killed the people? No, he did not. Various evidence containers for liquid and solid evidence. Of course, he didn't take his own evidence. Of course not. Paper envelopes for physical evidence. And those paper envelopes usually have evidence, signature, date, time, and who signed for it. Who was able to be present as that evidence was being passed along. Casting material to take molds of possible footprints around the perimeter with a rubber container for the mixture. So you're telling me if he knew about casting material to take molds outside, how come we saw a footprint out behind the couch? The big old boot print. At that point, had he taken off the booties and he forgot in a moment of rush, oh, jeez, I took off the booties and the boot went right in the dirt. At that moment, did he take off the boot? No, because it would have left his foot impression, right? But people were making it sound like step by step, this man was just checking off the boxes as he went in to commit this crime and leaving the crime scene. This is not going to be a popular video, I promise you that. There's only 11 right now, and I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off because of my tone, because of the way I'm presenting this. But you know what? At some particular point, you got to stop romanticizing this stuff and get real. There is a CSI effect that we talk about in criminal justice, and that's when people are deluded by what they see on all these CSI investigation shows, all these shows, the next 48, all these shows. They don't show all the aspect of the crime scene investigation. You're only seeing the detectives, and therefore people think that the detective does all the investigative work, and that's not true. Kind of like people are on pain because he could have planted evidence. He could have diluted this. He could have contaminated that. Bro, do you know how many people were involved in this investigation? There's a lot. So to say that one person was capable of investigating this whole crime scene, you're delusional. Because it doesn't really happen like that. And I've said that for a long, long time. A magnifying device should be kept. Crime scene tape for the scene, protective clothing, boot covers, eyewear, fiber-free overalls, face masks, hairnets, gowns, and anything that will prevent me from contaminating the scene with things I bring in with me. Okay, I could see this one too. I could see this one. You know, like I said with the gloves. Okay, this one will tell you. If I wear boot covers or if I wear eyewear, fiber-free overalls, a face mask, a hairnet, anything that prevents the person from contaminating the scene, I could see that. But still, it wasn't a perfect crime scene as we're being told and shown. So, He still made mistakes. Protocol. A blue light with yellow glasses, which makes small trace evidence more visible, can be used to ensure that a photo is taken of all the evidence. No, I doubt he had a blue light and yellow glasses. I doubt. There could be a very small amount of blood somewhere which wouldn't have been sampled, documented, or photographed otherwise. He's telling you this is what people did to investigate the crime at 1122 King Road. So if you're reading this or you're listening to this further on, you will understand that this is how he was pretty much telling you how the crime scene was going to be investigated. That mean he took this and then went and did the total opposite? No, I don't believe so. But that's my beliefs. Entering the home for a crime scene documentation and initial photography or videography, I may enter upon judicial approval of the search warrant and should do so with the minimum number of personnel. Of course, you're going in there to photograph. You don't want all these people around. And once again, you don't want them contaminating your crime scene. They're taking videos. You don't want all these people in there. Having too many personnel evident in the photography may put the integrity of the evidence into question and taint the scene. A contamination list should be made, documenting every person who enters and exits the crime scene and why. This includes first responding officers, firefighters, EMTs, family members, criminal investigators, and all crime scene personnel. And I remember a photograph of something being taped on the front door very early on. I think this is what was on that front door, where people had to enter, they had to sign, date, initial, and on the way out, they signed again, just to make sure that you knew who all was in that place. So if their DNA or, they contaminated the evidence, then you would know who more than likely did it. Still, there should not be that many people in the crime scene. Otherwise, contamination will be increased as the theory of exchange inevitably manifests. I must ensure that myself and my fellow crime scene personnel are wearing gloves and other protective equipment as to avoid contaminating the scene with latent fingerprints. Okay, so he's wearing gloves again. We get it. I'm venturing to say the man probably wore 3 pairs of gloves. And you're saying that sounds silly. Why would he wear that many pairs of gloves? Because every time you rip one, you tear one off, put it in whatever you're carrying to catch all the stuff that you might tear or break, put it in there, and then you have 2 more uncontaminated pairs of gloves. Because the last thing you want to do is stop mid-crime, put on a new fresh pair of gloves, and go on about your business. You're not going to do that. A fiber-free boot cover would also be ideal to avoid leaving physical footprints or residue from the boot. This one, obviously, he didn't do because there was a boot print out behind the couch. Evidence marker number 3. Anything that is fiber-free and covers the mouth, hair, and overall body would be helpful in avoiding crime scene contamination, since hair, saliva, skin cells, and other bodily fluid or cells may be added to the scene, thus contaminating it. Well, if he was looking for a fiber-free pair of overalls, do they sell those at Walmart? Do they sell those at Dickies? Do they sell those at Dick's Sporting Goods? Because if that's what he got, that would have been another purchase somewhere else. Maybe that purchase hasn't even been found yet. He was dressed all in black. He looked like a firefighter. Don't firefighters wear what they call them, waders? Wouldn't this look like a wader, kinda? The overall thing? especially if it was black. I don't know. Fibers can be left via the theory of exchange and would contaminate the crime scene from its initial state as the offender left it. So there'd be no contamination because you didn't bring anything in. You didn't, you're taking everything out with you. So that explains why it was such a clean crime scene from all this stuff. If they, it's been stated they got very little, but they got a lot. So whatever that means. Even if we can't assume that there was an offender despite seeming obvious, preventing contamination is an important way to ensure the integrity of the investigation and evidence. Ding, ding, ding. Well, we know that, Brian. We know that. And you were just Mr. Captain Obvious by telling us that. So we should always treat the crime scene as if there is indeed a criminal homicide, as to not miss out on important details. That is how this crime scene is being handled. The first thing for me to do is to take a coordinated series of crime scene photographs with a digital photography device or 35mm camera from a natural point of view. Of course. These photos must be taken prior to the movement of any object in the crime scene to ensure that the photo captures the scene as the offender left it. And this is what I want to tell you too. There's a lot of individuals that are angry that the house got torn down. I can see why you'd be angry. And they're upset because the replica is only so big. But in reality, the jury is going to see tons of photos, tons of videos, and a Pharos 3D screening of the whole place. So you're not going to need a replica that's built life-size. They're going to see photos. They're going to see what they need to see, which is where the murders took place, because that's the only crime scene you really have. These other people want to tell you that the crime scene was the whole house. That the blood on the handrail was a crime scene. No, it wasn't. Especially if it didn't come back to him. Okay, the crime scene was in the bedrooms. And him leaving the residence to his vehicle, wherever his vehicle was. All that area could potentially have evidence. The first floor probably wasn't even searched, wasn't swabbed. It might have been. And they might have dusted it for fingerprints. They dusted outside Bethany's window. They dusted outside the window in front of the kitchen, or on the other side of the kitchen. And of course they dusted the slider, and they probably dusted the floor in passing throughout the house where these crime scenes were. People get it misconstrued that the whole damn house was a crime scene. If you didn't find any evidence in that location, then that was not part of the crime scene. Okay, so you're taking photos, you're taking videos. The photographs should be taken from a general view of the exterior of the home, as well as general views of the interior, recording the time and detail of the photographs in the notes. So you're taking photographs, you're taking videos, capturing as it is without anything being moved. Setting up portable lighting ensures that the elements of the crime are adequately illuminated for photographic documentation. So I'm sure there was light set up so they could get shots of areas that, there might have been. I'm sure that these individuals that probably did the photographing and the video stuff are professional. They're experts in that area. Because not only are they having to deal with the photography of it, they're having to deal with the videography of it, the lighting, the shadows, and all this stuff. You don't want to take a picture of something that, kind of like what we've been debating about Kohberger's finger, you don't want to take a picture where people are guessing, is that a shadow? Is that a bruise? Is that a freckle? Is that a hangnail? What is that? Is that blood? You don't want that. You want to be as clear as possible. So there is no doubt. I mean, this is used for both sides. So, to say that this is just for the prosecution side is, once again, very naive to the point where you believe the defense doesn't have this piece of paper as well. Come on. So, you're going to have to open your mind up if you want and see both sides of this equation, because it's getting to that point where that one-sided tunnel vision is not going to get you anywhere. The photos should be in color to provide the best, most accurate image, thus avoiding photographic distortion. I don't know what the word distortion, I would think, kind of like I said, you don't want to have shadows, you don't want to have added stuff that could look like something. You want to be as clear and concise as possible. So you're photographing the bodies, you're videotaping it as well, you're videotaping all the evidence around the room. You're photographing from the room all the way out to the slider, all the way up the stairs, probably by Dylan's room, if at this point you have any evidence that she even saw anything. There's no need to photograph anything downstairs unless somebody tells you, hey, there was, they spoke of maybe possibly the perpetrator going downstairs. Then they would have started doing all the downstairs stuff. They could have dusted the whole house for all we know. I'm just speculating right now, which is not lying, because I'm going according to what this is talking about. And you can believe me or you cannot. Go spend $40,000 on a bachelor's degree and then let somebody who doesn't really understand it try to tell you that you're wrong and they're right. I mean, come on, man. At one point, you got to ask yourself, just because you can read a book and you can articulate the words does not mean that you understand the whole concept of the puzzle from start to finish, especially if you're not understanding the judicial process and everything else that goes along with it. I mean, I'm just saying that, and it could piss people off. That's fine. We agree to disagree, right? So it says the following details regarding photography should be recorded in the field notes and on the back of the photos if possible. So they record date, time, image structure, like this is photo number 1, photo number 2, photo number 3. Recording these details will ensure that the defense attorney does not attempt to devalue the quality of your evidence, which may make it inadmissible. Of course, if you mess up with not dating something, or not being clear, or you don't label something correctly, that little bit can make that piece of evidence, no matter how strong, inadmissible because you did not follow protocol. There's that word again. Protocol and procedure are the highest levels of integrity when it comes to what he's talking about right now. Data to identify the subject of the photograph, but without too much unnecessary information. The location of the photograph, including the state, city, street address. The identifying data of the photographer, including the name, police agency, badge number, identification number. The case number, if established at the time of dispatch, the precise time of the photograph, the date the photograph was taken, the weather at the time, the photographic equipment used, including shutter speeds, film type, and developing and printing techniques. And if you want to see this done with examples and videos, there are videos in the members only portion that you can go and see where it shows you how the photography camera is set up, how they photograph a casting, how they photograph a room, how they photograph all the stuff, and how they measure things. Exactly what he's talking about. It's in the members only part of my channel. Next, photos. A specific room should be taken with special attention to the living room in which the deceased woman was found. So in this paper, the deceased woman was found in the living room. So like he's saying, special attention should be taken to that area where she was found. Kind of like the bedroom should be the specific area that you put most of your attention on. You're not going to look back there by the tree stump at 11:22 and be looking for prints and DNA and all that stuff back there. At the coordination of photos is focused inward, specific components of the crime, like physical evidence, should be accounted for and detailed. These should also be logged in any of the field notes. So this person's logging all this stuff down. It's a long, tedious process, but it needs to happen. Once again, any of these pieces of evidence that later are discovered to be inculpatory can be admissible because of certain areas of misconduct, that you did not write something down, you did not date it, you did not sign it, you did not deliver it the way it was supposed to be delivered as evidence. This physical evidence should be photographed next to a measurement marker, which can be a ruler or any other easily comparable object of well-known size. The body of physical evidence to take a picture prior to collection from the forensic services and criminal investigator of include the deceased woman in the living room. He's going over the crime right now. Who should be photographed under adequate lighting from a long view. Specific shots should be focused on the evidence of harm on her body and clothing. So that's, in theory, what they did inside the bedrooms with the victims. The bruises on her face, the marks on her neck, the bloody shirt, and any other signs of post-mortem lividity should be photographed and taped without moving the victim. A measurement marker should be placed next to her. This right here, people are going crazy on this right here as well. The bruises on her face, the marks on her neck, the bloody shirt, and other signs of postmortem lividity. When you have to understand, when you're writing this type of paper, the more examples that you give, the better grade you get. Now, if he would have just said, we looked over the body and you need to photograph the most important parts of the signs of the person being deceased or the wound that they had or whatever, might be a B or C. But he went into very specific. The bruises on her face, the marks on her neck. Okay, was he reliving this with muscle memory as he was killing them? We don't know. But once again, this is protocol. The bloody shirt, of course there's going to be blood on the shirt if you're stabbing a 35-year-old woman on a couch. Wasn't Darlie stabbed on the couch? Darlie Rotier, or however you say her last name. She was stabbed so deep on one side that her necklace went into her neck. There's going to be marks on her neck. I'm not saying that this isn't evidence or this isn't a sign of state of mind or mens rea, but this is a paper we're reading right here. And I know people have broken this down because it gets you clicks. This isn't what they're going to use to convict a man, so it has no value at that point, unless they're able to say, well, look at the correlation as they talk to the jury and say, look at the correlation of the exam paper that he wrote in the very specific areas where he went into the bruises on her face. And we know that Kaylee had bruises on her face and the marks on her neck. We know that she was strangled. And we know that she had a bloody shirt on, as well as the victim laying next to her. They both had significant wounds that showed post-mortem lividity, as you can see in these photographs. Then they hand them to the jury. It's all about planting that seed. So did he write this as examples, or did he write this as he was already preparing for the murder at 1122 King Road? This will show if an offender moved the woman as to manipulate the crime scene. As we were told, Kaylee was slumped over against the corner on the bed by her parents. And we're told that we weren't told where Maddie was, but through process of elimination, I would say that she was laying either flat on her back or on her stomach on the bed, because the knife sheath was found under her on her right side. So does she have defense wounds? Are there hesitation marks on her related to the knife? Or are these multiple stab wounds? Here's another part that people are fixating on. Does she have defense wounds? Well, we were told that Kaylee had defense wounds, right? We're told that Xana had defense wounds. Almost severed her fingers. Almost severed. She didn't have her fingers severed or cut off. Quit saying that. That didn't happen. No matter who has said what, it's gotten to the point where people are believing what they want to believe. Never has that been stated that her fingers were cut off. Were these related to a knife? Of course, in this crime that he's depicting right here is a stabbing, so it's going to be related to a knife. Are these multiple stab wounds? Of course. If he went more than one, and people are already putting this together as like the bruises on her face. Okay, that's what he used, what Dylan saw, the crevice tool. That's what he hit her in the face with. Those were the bruises. I don't know. These must be photographed and taped. Is the mark on her neck related to the hanger near her? The photographs make sure that these items were indeed present at the crime scene. So is there a hanger near her? So the individual strangled her by using a hanger. So was it ligature marks? Was it used what the one with the, I can't think of it right now, but you used something to turn it and it tightens up around her neck and they choke you out with it. Most of these questions are speculated until absolutely confirmed by the forensic medical examiner, who can use scientific equation to determine the approximate time of death. This is the maximum that stands even when the scene seems to point to the obvious. The time of death is never entirely accurate, but the photograph could aid in the process as they capture phenomena such as rigor mortis or petrification when the woman was found. So the coroner is going to have these, and it's going to be able for her to detail the time of death a little closer. The knife should be photographed under adequate light. Well, we didn't have a knife. And a marker should be placed under the knife to give the best photographic representation of the evidence. But we didn't have a knife. So the misshapen coat hanger should be photographed under adequate light, and the measurement markers should be placed under the evidence. We don't even know if there was a coat hanger used in the crime at 1122 King Road. So, that's here nor there. The upended furniture and the children's furniture should be photographed firstly from a long view and when focused specifically on each piece of furniture under adequate lighting with a measurement marker. Damn, he sounds like he's outlining the Darley Rotier murders. All of this should be well documented in the field notes and on the photograph. Is there any sign of forced entry to the home? We know at 1122 there was not. This would be evident by broken glass from the windows and prime marks on the doors or windows surrounding the house. And I believe that that's what those investigators were doing. Were dusting for prints, looking to see if any of those windows had been pried open. This should be photographed, videotaped, and documented. We didn't see any photographs. We didn't see any videotaping, but doesn't mean that it didn't happen. If there is not forced entry, it may be suggested that the woman knew the killer. Interesting statement right here. If there is not forced entry, it may be suggested that the woman knew the killer. Why would he put that in there? Isn't that interesting to you? It is to me. See, it's little things like this that people don't catch because they're so fixated on the other stuff, the gloves, what he was wearing, all this stuff. We know what a killer wears most of the time. It's not rocket science. But this right here, if there's not forced entry, it may suggest that the woman knew the killer. Then you have to put, well, how did Brian know any of the perpetrators? That's why the surveillance, the stalking, all that other stuff is so relevant. Let me see what the chat is saying. I've been on this for a little bit. See what Tom says. A lot of that is just really not really thinking things through and just following what the creator says. Of course. I heard that the brain stems of many YouTubers have been severed. Probably not true, but there certainly is evidence to support it. Well, I guess you are like making jokes right now. It's cool. It's cool. I'm glad to see you here, Tom. Glad to see you here, Jeff, and everybody else who's here. This is a very serious matter. So, you know, if people are really going to talk about true crime, you know, and other avenues, then they should take it seriously. It's not a science project. You know, if you're going to read this, then you should understand it. You should know it step by step. And the only reason that I know it, and I'm not trying to brag one bit because I don't like to talk about myself like that, but the only reason I know it is because I've taken tests on this stuff. I've had to write papers on this stuff. I've had to do all kinds of stuff pertaining to this investigative process. So when he wrote this, and I was like, oh my God, that's almost like a perfect step by step. If this was a final exam, then he passed it. A video camera will be used at the well to go over all the evidence which was photographed. Documentation of the video evidence should be filled out and recorded in field notes. The crime scene sketch. That's one thing that they're doing right now. They're talking about the sketching. I always wondered about that in the beginning, why they didn't have a sketch of the perpetrator. In the very beginning, how come there was not a sketch of a potential perpetrator? Why? Because it was only a person seen in a balaclava and an eyebrow from the side. That's all the person saw, plus clad in black and something that looked like a vacuum object. Well, that wouldn't have been a very good sketch, would it? Because that's what is all in the paperwork as to what she saw until she drew the balaclava. So that gave police a little more insight as to what it was instead of a COVID mask, what everybody else was saying. He was clad in black and he wore a COVID mask. I don't know where they got that from, but okay. So here's the crime scene sketch. The crime scene sketch occurs after the scene was initially searched, photographed, and videotaped. The sketch is of great value in the criminal court. The sketch should first be done in pencil to ensure that the sketch accurately portrays evidence and measurements pertaining to the crime scene. The final version will be done in non-perishable ink via pen. The physical evidence of the crime, which includes but not limited to the knife, misshapen coat hanger, furniture, as well as any other biological evidence like bodily material or fluids, should be drawn out in accurately measured proportion from each other and permanent objects in the crime scene sketch. The final search and confirmation by the forensic processing unit and investigator will determine whether this was all the physical evidence at the scene. New evidence can be added to the crime scene sketch when new measurements are taken. Of course, the distance from permanent fixtures should be accurately recorded and depicted. The crime scene sketch should be measured by the criminal investigator and accurately display the proportions of the physical evidence. Any inaccurate portrayal of the location of evidence can be influenced the juror perception of the guilt or innocence of the suspect. While you do not need to be an artist, the responsibility of sketching should be taken with accuracy and a goal for a clear portrayal in mind. So I'm sure you're going to see those in trial. You're going to see the sketches that were used to identify a potential perpetrator. Like I was telling Salty, you don't go to school to learn to be a killer. You either have something inside you that is already programmed to kill, and learning this stuff as protocol, as to what the police is going to be looking for, it just kind of like helping you put on the gloves. Remember, it's almost a checklist. I'm putting on my gloves. I'm putting on my fiber-free overalls. I'm putting on the booties over my boots. I'm putting on this. I'm taping off the ends of my pants areas. I'm taping off the end of the sleeves. I'm doing all this. Might even be wearing, a little bandana so it doesn't catch the sweat under the balaclava. Being a killer, I would say, is more about the mental component than being the individual who takes classes. It's almost like if you have a desire to be a welder and you've been preparing for it, practicing and all this, once you learn the bookwork, are you not going to be more proficient? Are you going to be using more of the bookwork, or are you going to be using what you learned and taught yourself? I believe that he was a self-teacher. He was an individual that taught himself not only what he was learning, but he taught it in an avenue to try to practice it, to be proficient in what he wanted to do. I believe that he just wanted to kill. He wanted to know what it would like to kill. And I'm going to show some more. This is going to be a long live, so y'all buckle up. Jump on in. Though I can assign another officer to sketch it, I've decided to take this task on. A 25-foot steel measuring tape should be used to record these exact and accurately recorded measurements of the physical evidence and permanent objects in the house. Too much detail shouldn't be included in the sketch to avoid confusion. Movable items unrelated to the crime scene convey details irrelevant to the crime and will be avoided. Extraneous detail, including movable furniture, may cause issues if the jurors recognize that items in the house were moved after the fact. This would be equivalent to crime scene contamination and may render evidence inadmissible. If he's using this for anything, it would be counteracting any kind of evidence that they do have against them. And how was it obtained? Did they follow protocol, aka the Franks hearings that he wanted, or did they contaminate stuff? Things like that. If he's using this for anything, it would be things like that. It would not be to commit a murder. I mean, all the books that you've read and all the miniseries and all that stuff that I believe are for theatrical reasons more than anything, they highlight the gory part, the leading up to, and the ending. They don't show you the exact parts of solving the crime. If you can solve a crime in an hour in one of these crime shows, look how long it's taken to get to trial. We're not even there yet. How long did it take for all this stuff to come out? It took that long because they were still investigating, I'm sure, that all this stuff was correct. The living room should be sketched out with the deceased woman being drawn in proportion to the knife, coat hanger upended. Furniture, children's furniture, walls, and permanent objects in the house, other rooms are relevant, should be included in the sketch. I've decided to use the rectangular coordination method with two right angles being outlined in proportion to the physical evidence and the permanent fixtures centering around the living room. A projection can be used to document biological trace evidence like blood stains or other physical evidence that imprinted on the walls. Bullet holes would be something that should be ruled out, and if a bullet hole are present, they should be documented on a 3D exploded sketch before the drywall is removed via the saw. Though it appears obvious that a knife was used in this crime, we did not know this for sure and should make it sure to document everything and look for less apparent evidence. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking, I would like to see a lot more of his classmates' final exams and read how they put this stuff together. Because I'm more than certain that his classmates papers were pretty much like this one. And how many of his classmates have committed murders that we know about? I mean, we don't really know for sure whether he committed this one or not, but we're more than pretty certain he did. But we don't know for sure. The crime lab will be able to decipher with scientific certainty what is and is not the original element of the crime. Staging is common. For example, the offender may be taking items from the house to make it look like a burglary turned robbery, which went wrong. The official crime preliminary report should include the accurate sketch with the following details included: the name of the investigator, identifying badge number, a detailed location of the scene, such as the city, state, street address. The living room should be noted at the center of the sketch, the exact date and exact time the sketch was first drawn in pencil, the evidence listing key, which shows evidence as it corresponds to a letter or mark indicated in said key. You know what's a little frustrating is I did a lot of these videos in the very beginning and they would get like 5 or 7 views. And now that this came out, everybody's like, all in this stuff. Maybe they didn't know who 12 gauge was. Maybe it's just boring, like it's boring me to read this, because people don't want to learn this stuff. They want to learn what they want to learn in their way, and that's fine. That's fine. The case number of the investigation, a compass arrow to give direction, the scale of the sketch should be included, or the word not drawn on the scale. I'm choosing to draw it out in the scale, where 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. The computer-aided design program, CAD, which uses laser lights and takes up to 25,000 measurements per second in 3D, may be utilized as available for the scale of the scene most accurate. I would request that the CAD, if available, forgive the best portrayal of this serious crime, allowing for an accurate point of view and zooming of particular elements of the crime scene. The more comprehensive crime scene search using the strip search method. In order to collect evidence from the interior of the residence, I will assign roles to officers on the scene, briefing them to watch where they are stepping and not to act impulsively or without great care. Hasty actions will lead to valuable evidence being trampled and lost, and that's what people were accusing that happened in this case. The strip search method is what I have decided on, as it allows for the interior of the crime scene to be searched from one end to the other with more than one officer forensic processing unit. The exterior of the property should be searched from one end to the other as well, switching to a grid search if necessary. Walking from one end of the scene to the opposite end of the scene, I will then turn around and cover ground to the right or left without stepping on the same spot twice. So I ask you, do you really think in the 9 minutes that it took to commit this crime, he was going over this in his head? Do not walk in the same spot twice. The rooms of the trailer should be searched in this method with special attention to the living room where the victim lies, assigning a CSI or officer myself to this section of the living room would allow that the scene is thoroughly checked. As I move from one end to the other, I will make sure that I shine my flashlight ahead of myself to ensure that I do not damage or carry away smaller pieces of physical evidence. Smaller items of physical evidence include wood chips, hairs, paint flecks, glass fragments, small fibers. If not careful, there may be lost before even accounting for the observing them. If new pieces of physical evidence are uncovered, I will take note of it for documentation in photography or videography. Things such as footprints inside and outside should be prepared to be photographed and videotaped after they are casted, before and after. I must photograph and videotape the new evidence as well as log it with the following information and account for it in the crime scene sketch: the time and date of evidence discovery, the location that I found the evidence, the name of myself or whichever officer, CSI, or criminal investigator discovered it, As this is a serious crime, I've chosen that specialized crime scene personnel will assist me. A description of the evidence, any identifying mark to further detail the evidence, the name of an officer, witness defined. This will ensure that there is no question that this was indeed an element of the original crime scene. This will save the investigators setbacks in court. And we've seen all this happen. They've been questioned to death, dragged through the mud. They planted this. They planted that. They walked through the crime scene. They walked through the blood. How did they not contaminate it? All this and that. Now you're seeing exactly, in Brian's own words, how it possibly did not happen. All the information that is carefully recorded regarding the crime scene evidence aids the crime report. The location of this evidence is very important for him and give it the following information. Establish the tracing of or identification of the suspect. Establishing the suspect's modus operandi or identifying similar MOs via information added to the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program from the completed crime report. Confirming alibis or exposing lies, and this is interviewing all the witnesses, connecting suspect to the crime or eliminating suspects, which that's what the police try to do, is eliminate suspects. The identification of contraband, stolen property, and other illegal items, identifying victims if they're not identified. For example, we can't assume the woman lived at this residence before confirming it. A dead body may not initially tied to the residence, which I'm sure they had to identify whether the 4 people in that residence lived there. Providing investigative leads, for example, checking into the husband or boyfriend and the location of the children based on the crime scene evidence is warranted, providing a statutory element of the offense. And then it goes on and on and on, talking about the evidence, collection, packaging the evidence. It's just a textbook. And then you outreach to other agencies and immediate elements of the investigation. They reached out to the FBI. They reached out to the Idaho State Police. So all this is just textbook stuff. Protocol. The compilation of evidence in a preliminary report, progress report, closing report, and prosecution report. So, and that was the end of it. And the FBI's Uniform Crime Report to give summative information of all applicable crimes to help police officers, criminologists, and criminal investigators understand the social trends of crime, thus aiding future cases. So even Kohberger's crime is probably in the UCR at this point if he gets convicted. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. I in no means am defending Kohberger when I read that. I'm defending the aspect of the criminal justice program, which a lot of people want to just make it more than it really is. It is important, but there's specialists in this program. There's specialists that go with certain things. They don't all just work together uniformly. And that's why whenever Payne was asked on the stand, who has the evidence? Well, the guy in evidence locker. Well, what did he know what's on the tape? Does he know what tapes are blah, blah, blah? Did they tell him what this and that and the other? Well, of course he wouldn't know. You know? Of course they wouldn't know. He wouldn't know. Because all that stuff is not released to the lead investigator until they're done investigating. And I thought this one was interesting. I might not get through all of it, but I have a couple of others that I want to show you guys. All these documents are on the Idaho website, so I'm not showing you anything that you can't find yourself. And before y'all ask, is 12 Gauge okay? Is he mad? No, I'm not mad. I am okay, though. It is Friday. I made it to the end of the week. like I told you, it kind of aggravates me a little bit when people try to tell me what I've gone to school for. It's like, why are you telling me this? Like, I don't know, you know? I don't know if they're telling the chat, which is okay, but, you're wanting to tell me like I don't know. I'd hope my instructor didn't just pass me because I just, was able to convince them that I kind of knew what I was talking about. This was the questionnaire that he probably got from that final exam before leading up to it, because everything the process, you're given an assignment to, ask these questions to kind of prepare yourself for what you're going to write once you get to the crime scene. So you're asking yourself, okay, what am I going to see once I get there? At least this is how I perceive this. So I could be wrong, but this is how I perceive it, okay? So whenever he was asking, what was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings to this point. Of course, he would want to know criminals who have done this crime, what their first move they made in order to accomplish their goal. He's still a student at this point. He's still a student. I understand the whole jumping into the mindset and all that, but at this point, he's still a student. He may be double dipping, he might be learning, feeling this stuff because he's unable to feel to an extent, but he's still a student. He's still a student. So criminals and criminologists are different. The wording, it's all about the wording. It's all about the wording. It's kind of like a psychiatrist and a psychologist. One's a doctorate level, one's a lesser level. They can't prescribe medication. They can still see clients, but they can't prescribe medication. They can diagnose, but they can't prescribe. The psychiatrist can prescribe. So it's all about lesser levels, I would say, of education. I do understand that 12 gauge. I think they're talking to chat or don't really realize how it comes towards you. Sometimes just mind is trying to make a different point. Either way, they, me, kind of don't. I know what their words mean to you. Well, thank you for that. I mean, I'm not upset at them. I'm just like, come on, why would I even have a channel if I didn't have any kind of insight on what I'm talking about? Watching a TV show doesn't qualify me to be up here opining on the logistics of criminal justice. It does not. I could watch every crime show on YouTube and I could figure out the wording and how puzzle pieces go together, but it's still totally different when you incorporate the criminal justice or the judicial system part of it, the investigative part of it, the forensic part of it, the psychology part of it, all of it. Like my last class was forensic psychology. So I was dabbling into the mindset of criminals. I don't want to say killers because there's more involved in the criminal justice system than serial killers. It is such a small percentage. It's a criminal education to catch a criminal, not a serial killer. There's profilers. There's all kinds of individuals that specialize in different avenues. Did they all learn the very basic stuff? Of course. I'm sure they all did. Did they learn the master level? Yes. Dr. Bricado. Hopefully he comes on my panel soon. He's a doctor And I'm sure he's learned not only through education, but by life experiences, how to incorporate what he learned in the book arena, in the job arena, and put it all together. And I think that's what Mr. Kohberger was attempting to do as well. That's a good question. I always wondered why he was interested in BTK. Bind, torture, kill. Yeah. Yeah, you just look in those eyes and there's no real life in them. Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. Well, I mean, I would hope that people would be preparing. And like what I heard in that video, this survey or questionnaire that was done was just not done by Mr. Kohberger. It was done as a collaborative conjunction of a group project. So these questions, among with the others, were all collaboratively put together by a group trying to get the answer that they were looking for to kind of get into the mindset or the psyche of the thoughts and the feelings of criminals. Not killers, criminals. Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. Before leaving, is there anything else that you did? Did you wash your hands? Did you go to the bathroom? Did you make sure you didn't leave a candle on? What did you do? Did you make sure you didn't forget the knife, sharpener, sheath, the backpack? Did you make sure you got everything in your kill kit so that, once you got to the crime scene, you wouldn't be scurrying around for scissors or something to cut the tape with if you somehow left the knife or dropped it or whatever? There's so much that could go wrong. But many people have this mentality that this was a perfect crime. That he walked through the crime scene like a robot. And that's what enabled him not to transfer any evidence. But there is evidence. We just haven't heard about it. Other than what we've heard, I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's more tying this man to this crime than what we've heard. And most of it is probably going to be in the rooms where the crimes occurred. They didn't occur in the kitchen. They didn't occur in the living room. They didn't occur in the bathroom. They didn't occur in any of these areas. But isn't it interesting how many people want to spend their time and their energy talking about the what ifs, or could it have been, or this person this, or this person that. This person's name got brought up. Okay, well, were they in the bedrooms? Were they the one clad in black? I saw something earlier that said Bethany texted or called Dylan at 2:53. What else was happening at 2:53? And then they shot to the scene where Saeed was getting the light shined in his eyes coming across the street with the two beers in his hand. So that in itself can bring conjuncture. Could Saeed have just been walking out the King Roadhouse, messing with Bethany? See, that's what people want you to think when they say stuff like that. Because to many people, this is how it all adds up. From his last photo, he thought he did it perfectly. Well, I could say yes and I could say no. I don't know why he would be throwing up the thumbs up. That's not going to be neither here nor there. Unless he admits to what he thought when he was putting that thumbs up, nobody's ever going to know. But, we can assume that that's why he put the all's good. After committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? After you committed that crime, what were you thinking and feeling? Were you elated? Were you exhausted? Were you feeling exhausted? Were you feeling overwhelmed? What were you thinking and feeling? Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or the target? Please detail what you were thinking or feeling. See, none of this is attributing the physical aspect. None of this is asking in detail, did you put on the gloves? Did you put on the booties? Did you make sure that you taped off the legs, taped off the wrist? How maybe even taped off around the balaclava, around the neck? To make sure that you did all that? No, it's asking about thoughts and feelings, which is a mental component. They're trying to get in the mindset, the psychology of an individual who is committing these crimes. It's not about the physical aspect, the forensic psychology of it, the mental. Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or the target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. After arriving, what step did you take prior to locating the victim or the target, person or the object? Please detail your thoughts or your feelings. They're not saying, give me the play-by-play leading up to your target. No, they're not saying it. They're not asking that. They're asking to give in detail your thoughts and your feelings. Why did you choose the victim or the target over others? Why did you choose that victim or target over others? And once again, I'm not defending Kohberger, but this was a group project. This was not a Kohberger project, as we've been told by so many people. I want to go over another thing that I found earlier. This was interesting. It's long, but it's interesting to me. It is I'll go over it with you. Oh, I have this up already. And it's black. Okay, this is the information that was put under the gag order. Hold on a second. Hold on, that's the wrong one. If he knew there was mostly women, I could see him thinking they don't usually have guns. True. Yeah, what if? What if this? What if that? What if? And that dog's loud, huh? Okay, I guess I'm going to go over the Syray thing that just hit today, and then I'll do the other one. This says, the affidavit of Syray, vague and undisclosed expert testimony, essay in balance, says, State of Arizona, County of Maricopa, I'm an adult over the age of 18. I have personal knowledge of the facts set forth in this affidavit. To avoid repetition, please refer to my training and experience in the accompanying affidavit of Syray referencing timing data. So there's his. In preparing this affidavit, I have reviewed a motion in limine number 2, vague and undisclosed expert testimony filed by the defendant on 2/24/25. I have reviewed all of the state's responses in reference to this motion, as well as essay Balances, Special Agent Balances Draft Report and Final Report. I am addressing the matter of FBI Special Agent Nicholas Balance anticipated testimony in this affidavit and what has not been disclosed. I reviewed the initial report's final report, first discord, second disclosures, and now the third disclosure. Despite this progression of disclosure, Special Agent Balance's opinions on the relevant issues at hand still have not been disclosed. I reviewed disclosures in reference to Special Agent Balance's interpretations and opinions relating to the AT&T call detail records. They are vague and at times contradictory. At this time, I am unable to identify his methodologies and or resulting opinions on most of his work, preventing me from any real analysis to determine the basis of his opinions. The disclosures in reference to the facts and data relied on by Special Agent Balances to form his opinions regarding AT&T cell detail records are conflicting and void of substance. His work did not contain his methodology other than a paragraph. He did not mention AT&T handoff data, drive test mapping, or other critical methodology required in this analysis. The report does not provide explanation why SA Balance may or may not rely on AT&T data, preventing me from any real analysis of his opinion. I regularly work as a subject matter expert, and it is standard in my field for experts' opinion to be well documented and based on accepted best practice or methodology. The facts and data relied upon to reach an opinion are known and disclosed. Special Agent Balance's work is a departure from the field standard. He has not disclosed his methodology and analysis for his opinions. This is partially due to contradicting methodologies that have been disclosed. This is partially due to vague work product absent of any real substance as to facts and data. This is partially due to changes that evolved through iterations of work product without explanation and documented by facts and data as a basis. I did note that Special Agent Balance has a dual role in this case. He is an expert witness for the state, and using these same skills, he was involved in the actual investigation from the onset. He was co-located with the investigators throughout the investigation. His opinions and interpretations were relied on by investigators and prosecutors. These interpretations and opinions found their way into every probable cause statement supporting search warrants against the defendant. He is referenced in nearly every search warrant issued. His opinions and interpretations were an integral piece of building probable cause against the defendant. Unfortunately, most of his opinions and interpretations provided to investigators and prosecutors were not supported by the evidence in this case. It is this very reason I was awaiting SA Balance's report detailing the facts, data, methodology, and analysis relied on to make such egregious errors. I expected to see work that explained the conclusions as well as properly addressing omitted analysis and errors in the work. The omitted work in this case is exculpatory to Mr. Kohberger. The intentional omission of the exculpatory evidence. SA Balance did not include analysis of AT&T handoff data provided by AT&T for the defendant's mobile device on November 13, 2022, between the hours of 2:30 a.m. and 3 a.m. See, like I was telling you, if people do not do their jobs correctly, and he's saying, this is Shire saying that this could be exculpatory because he didn't do his job correctly. I'm not saying he didn't, but based on this document at this point, he's showing that he didn't do what he was supposed to do correctly based on their methodologies, which they could both have different methodologies. That's neither here nor there. At this point, it just looks like he didn't do his job to the best as he could have. So, SA Balance did not include an analysis of the AT&T data regarding 23 time periods in this report. that he appears to be suggesting the defendant was or very near the home, near the crime scene. This opinion appears to be based on the cell tower connections, primarily handoff connections in the defendant's AT&T record. It is difficult to determine the process or methodology SA Balance relied on to suggest this connection for several reasons, because the AT&T records do not support the statement. There is no report or analysis detailing the defendant's movements between June 2022 and December 2022, which would be needed to surmise the defendant's phone was at or near the crime scene 23 times prior to the homicides. There is no mapping showing the network connections relied upon. There is no drive test coverage maps other than one cell site. A recent disclosure about what SA Balance may testify to reads, handoffs are mapped on a case-by-case basis, which is determined by the needs of the investigation. From my experience as a subject matter expert in this field, this claim is outside of any established best practice or reliable methodology of analysis. The standard is that all data must be analyzed and considered regardless of how it impacts the investigation. So when we get down to the experts battling it out, before people get into that mindset that Syray won, case over, experts are going to duel it out, and they can make anything they present to be relevant, to be the turning point that everybody's been looking for. So, with that being said, what I'm reading, it makes it sound like the FBI didn't, or the special agent didn't do a job correctly. I reviewed the disclosures about what SA Balance will testify to, and do not find the disclosures provide further analysis to support his opinions. The first cell site recorded in this session is the only cell site that is chosen, based on measurements made by the cell phone representing the best signal from these measurements and ranking of surrounding cell sites. So this is what Syray is saying. So if Balance gets on, or we see his paperwork, it's going to be a total contradiction to what Syray is saying right here. This is not the final end all. Okay, so before people get on their high horse and start saying Syray won the game, blah blah blah, he's the one, da da da, he's the one that's gonna free Brian, they should let him go tomorrow, blah blah blah, all this stuff. That's not how it works. And that's what I was saying earlier. There's protocols, the court processes. That's why it's so infuriating when people demand people to be interrogated. They haven't even been a suspect in the crime. They want people to be let go because somebody on YouTube found something that makes sense to them, and they should turn it over to the judge the next day, and that little bit of evidence is enough to set the defendant free. It doesn't happen that way. These aren't those movie moments where at the last minute somebody bursts through the door. I got something special to say that's going to set this person free. It's not going to happen like that. These experts are going to go round and round and round and round and round and round, and they're going to confuse all the information until they get the desired result, which is to ultimately probably confuse the jury as to what is right and what is wrong. The theory can be disproven with the AT&T records themselves. This response does not explain why he would use handoff data at certain times while ignoring it at other times. The coverage maps are created using the actual measurement taken by the GAR and interpolating using the natural neighbor algorithm. In other words, it's looking at a known values at known location to determine the expected value at a location where your measurement could not have been taken. The natural neighbor algorithm was first published by Robin Simpson in 1981 and is widely accepted in both academia and as an industrial standard in determining the coverage of a particular cell site within a broader cellular network. And this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of this This is how I'm basing my theory. See, they're not basing it on case law like the other in the court, like the attorneys are based on case law. These individuals are going to be basing it on people they studied under, people that have written books, people that presented a theory that they incorporated, that they built upon, that, goes against what this other guy is saying. I mean, that's what you're going to get. So please do not take these as the end all. We haven't even gone to trial. The statement falls well short of any real disclosure of how the GAR product estimates cell site covering areas. I have been in direct contact with Gladiator Forensics, and this statement contradicts what Gladiator Forensics communicated to me about their own products. A recent disclosure states page 13 depicts cellular phone usage by the 8458 phone on November 13, 2022. And Balance is expected to testify that when the 8458 phone interacted with the AT&T network at 2:47:29 a.m., the phone was not at Brian Kohberger's residence marked BK on the map. Rather, it was southeast of the Brian Kohberger residence as depicted by the drive test data. Balance is also expected to testify that he analyzed additional handoff data that occurred during the data session, and that an 8458 phone stopped communicating with the network at 2:54:45. This disclosure does not provide an analysis or opinion as to what SA Balance found when he analyzed the additional handoff data that occurred during this data session. This is the very data I previously testified about having been omitted from SA Balance's work, product, and opinions. SA Balance conducted a significant amount of drive test data, had not provided that data to support his work. Drive test data is collected when an investigator takes radio frequency survey equipment out into the field and collects signal measurements of cellular network. By driving specific grid patterns through an area, it is possible to capture enough data to reliably estimate a cell site's coverage area. In this case, SA Balance and SA Kennedy spent several days conducting drive tests in and around Pullman and Moscow. In all, they collected well over 500,000 data points, enough data points to effectively map the coverage areas of all relevant cell sites related to this case, that being roughly 24 cell sectors. SA Balance has only produced coverage mapping for 4 sectors. SA Balance has collected the required data and does not have access to the required software to map all the sectors he analyzed in the drive test efforts. The conversion of raw data to a coverage image is relatively non-existent when compared to the effort required to collect the raw data. SA Balance, in accordance with FBI CAS policy, had his work product peer-reviewed by another FBI CAS agent, SA Kennedy. There are official reports stating SA Kennedy did peer review SA Balance's work product and signed off as it being complete and accurate. I created the first subject matter expert certification course in the United States in this field for state and local law enforcement. I have taught this course for over a decade, certifying over 100 subject matter experts in this field. Part of this course includes a peer review process. The standards in this field dictate that data must support a peer review. I personally completed well over 50 peer reviews myself. The state has not disclosed the required data to support a peer review of SA Balance's work. So there you have it. And like I said, this is what we're going to see. This is what we're going to see between both of them. Now we're going to see Balance counteract that, right? And he's going to show, well, this is what I did do, and this is how I did, did get the communication cast report and all this. Possibly he didn't save his work for whatever reason. I don't know why he wouldn't have. I thought this was interesting, this next one. And I'm going to show you, and this is probably going to be the last little bit that I do because it's almost 2 hours. And like I said, I like to be multidimensional, where I'm just not sticking on one side. That gets so old. It doesn't mean innocence or guilt at this point. It means evidence versus stuff that is not going to be even in the evidence, you know? That's where we're at right now. Stop talking about innocence and guilt. We're not even to that point yet. This was collected on 12/30/2022. One nitrate type black glove. We've all seen that. And like what I was just saying in his final exam, he outlined all this stuff. So this is the evidence collection log that he was talking about. So whenever you collect evidence, this is how you collect it. People act like you just see this evidence and you throw it in a bag and you put it in a box. It cracks me up. Closet by the north wall of entryway, west side. It was collected as an item by this person. One Walmart receipt with one Dickies tag. Closet on the north wall of entryway, east side. So this was on the other side. So Mr. Martin, whoever, I think that's Terry Martin or whatever her name is. I don't know what her name is. Whoever T. Martin is, that's who collected all these and signed off for them. Two marshals receipt, closet on north wall of entryway, west side, and they're all collected as evidence. Dust container from the Bissell Power Force vacuum, closet, north wall of the entryway, east side. And anytime there's an error, you draw a line through it, you initial it, and put the date. Possible hair strands, there were 8 of them. Head of the Libman broom, closet, north wall of entryway, east side. Fire TV stick with cord and the plug. It was plugged into the back of the Samsung TV, west wall, living room, TV stand. And possible animal hair strand under the computer pad on desk in the northeast bedroom. Northeast bedroom under the computer pad on the desk. Possible hair east wall of shower on the tile. So all those people that were saying that he cleaned that bathroom immaculately, there was no way they were going to find anything. No way they were going to find anything in that bathroom because he cleaned it every day, every moment of the day, every second because of his OCD. It's interesting to me also. I would suggest that individuals really look up the diagnoses and they understand them. That not everybody is the same when it comes to what you get off Google. Not one person fits every OCD diagnosis that they may give. There are different types of OCD. So to say the man had ASD, OCD, bipolar, whatever the hell, does not mean that he's going to act just like your crazy ex who had bipolar and tried to stab you or tried to run you over or spend all your money or cheated with your best friend. I mean, come on. If you can't be open-minded, don't speak on it because not one shoe fits all. And could he potentially have these aspects? Of course. But we're not one-dimensional enough to just put everything in one box. If you're that way about true crime, you need to stop watching it because it doesn't work that way. This is interesting, though. The possible hair under the computer pad on the desk in the northeast bedroom. Computer pad on desk in northeast bedroom. So they found possible hair, probably his. He probably sheds like Murphy does. I mean, they both have curly hair. So here's a stereotype, okay? Curly-haired people shed everywhere they go. So since he had curly hair, He shed all over the place. That's, he could have, I don't even know where to go with that. But, I mean, that's the type of stuff I hear day in, day out, One possible hair strand from uncased pillow on the north side of the bed, northeast bedroom. And this is the person who got that, T. Martinez. As you can see, it's very documented, very methodical, with the person who collected the evidence, who found it, computer tower from the northeast bedroom desk, northeast bedroom, item not tagged, bag tagged, because zip tie and info was on there. So they zip tied that. That's the only reason they didn't bag it and tag it. And 11 or 12:30:22. Here's more information. The time, who analyzed this paperwork, no immediate color change. The control, known blood was pink in color. So this is some of the blood stuff that they were talking about. White towel from shelf of kitchen table. Diluted red, brown, irregular stain. Negative. So obviously it didn't have any kind of negative. It came up negative for blood or any kind of bodily fluids. Dark red spot, small. I don't know what that word is. Flaked off surface upon your touch west of sink kitchen counter. This item was collected by J. Ayers, collected without the test. Pizza cutter, top drawer, west of sink, east of fridge, reddish scratch in the metal. Came back negative. See, all these came back negative, so I'm not going to say that every time. Okay? The dark red irregular stain, the side panel of the drawer, second west of sink, negative for any kind of blood or anything like that. The one that did come back was pink in color, so this was collected. This was the dark red spot, flaked off surface upon touch in the sink, off the sink counter. So they could probably touch it and it came off. 332 screwdriver from the bottom drawer west of sink, brown spot, negative. Ajax bottle of soap near the bottom of the edge on the west side of the sink, small dark stain, negative. Ajax bottle of soap near bottom linear stain, negative. Switch on north wall of kitchen behind the sink, dark reddish stain, negative. Switch on north wall of kitchen behind the sink, small dark reddish stain, negative. Pink red, irregular stain on edge of plate from the cabinet west of the sink, which was negative. So all these were negative for no immediate color change. So whenever they were looking for it being potentially blood, I guess, they didn't come back positive for any of that. So here's another one. Microwave on counter in the kitchen, northeast corner, dark reddish long stain in the back. Negative. Dark discoloration and gout of counter tile just south of the microwave. Negative. Orange drip south wall of the kitchen east of the window. Negative. Northeast bedroom, northeast closet, interior of north door, dark red stains, multiple irregular and pieces. Negative. Small red, brown stain on the exterior door of the northeast closet and northeast bedroom, north door. Negative. So, as I'm reading these, I'm thinking, if they were going to walk through my little room right here that I have my computer, how many stains would they find that were red or dark in color? There'd be a lot of them. Does that mean that they were all blood? or dried up blood or anything like that. No. There's a lot of things that you spill. There's a reason for these stains. But people want to instantly say this is dried up blood. So if you test it, there's going to be platelets that have been dried or any kind of blood material that you can analyze to tell you, and it's going to change color to tell you that this is potentially a blood-based object. Edge of south door, northeast closet, northeast bedroom, very small red-brown stain, negative. Interior of south closet door, north door, paint stains, white marks, northeast room, negative. 2 small reddish brown, irregular stain inside of south closet north. So this was all done upon sweeping the apartment. To say that these stains didn't come out later on as anything else, anything's possible. White towel on black and brown stool, dark brown stain, and the towel fibers, negative. So this evidence was turned over to Ann Taylor. Gray smear, interior of south door of south closet, northeast bedroom. See, they went through and they methodically, this is 166 pages. So as you can see, all this stuff that they looked into, it was all negative. But that's not to say that there wasn't evidence at that apartment. He just cleaned the hell out of it. Better look at those new defense docs. I will eventually, I guess. Can you just kind of paraphrase it for me so I don't have to go read the whole thing? That'd be awesome. I mean, if they did find stuff and I'm reading something that they didn't find, I'm open-minded to say that, they could have found some stuff. But at this point, when they're writing all this stuff down on this presumptive chemical test for blood, all of this stuff is coming out negative. So just paraphrase what the documents say, if you could, for us. No blood. And there's a lot of descriptive things about the stain or the surface. See, we'd heard about these reddish brown things that they did take for testing, such as the one on the pillowcase, the blanket with the covering that was marked a certain way. We didn't hear about all this stuff right here. So see how the only reason I'm going over this is because I'm showing you the very extensive process of investigative tools that they use, and it's just not looking in a room looking for evidence. I know people know that that's not how it happens, but they think that these crimes are solved so easily. Like they're swabbing. Okay, this one came up. Cutting. Let's see what that one is. Red, brown stain on uncased pillow. That's the one I was talking about. Of the bed. 2 separate stains that were cut. Only larger skin stain tested. So they tested that one. And that one came back positive for blood. So that could have been his blood. That could have been somebody else's blood. I'm sure we'll find out. And then there was a mattress cover on the bed in the northeast room. On the edge facing the doorway, brown irregular drip. This was collected and it tested positive for C, which would be C is for collected. So they collected that one because it came up positive. Unzips into 2 pieces. Top piece And bottom piece, collected, packaged separately, both marked items. These came back positive for blood. And then everything else that we're looking at did not. And then it goes into the Don Daniels, the reporting officer. This was on 12/30/22. And this is an itemized report of what they collected. And you could go back and look at all this stuff. If you want me to email you this document, I can email you this document. And you can look at it on your own. Because a lot of this stuff was either sent to the lab or was not. So if it wasn't sent to the lab, and then there's the person, 7/12, the date 1/3/22, Dawn Daniels, her signature, Officer Talbot, transfer to ISP, 1/3/23. So it's very, very detailed. And that is my reasoning for showing you this. Because if any of these things were not here, then chances are they would have been able to have a Franks hearing. Because there would have been procedural misconduct, you know? And you're right, Mickey, it only takes one piece of evidence. And then it goes into, there's no way I can read all that. Even if I turn this page white, you still cannot read that. Maybe you can, but I can't read those scribbles. On 12/30/22 at approximately 16:09 hour, Judge Gary J. Libberger finds there is probable cause to believe the storage closet labeled G201 in black marker on a wood door located in Building F of Steptoe Apartments may contain items listed as 1 and 5, and the section of item to be seized may be found in the storage unit. Also, he authorized the search of storage unit labeled G201 located in Building F of Steptoe Apartments. So this was a written out search warrant because they itemized what they were looking for, where they were looking for it, and the location. So he signed it. She signed it, dated it, hours, and see body camera recording for telephonic application. And this just goes on to tell you the person being served has been identified by the serving deputy, has been served in accordance with the laws and rules of the state of Idaho. So there's the signature of Mr. Brian C. Kohberger. And we've heard that he has problems with motor skills. So you tell me, I'm making this bigger. Does that look like he has problems signing his name? I mean, I don't know. Nobody really knows, I guess, unless you know him. I mean, to me, that looks like a fairly decent signature. You can tell more what that says than what this says. I mean, my signature is kind of like that, I guess. You said it looks like a girl's handwriting. That's interesting. And this goes on to say, you know, he's housed in the Latah County Jail. Let me make this a little smaller. Like I said, there's 166 pages of this. So if you want this, email me and I'll email you the document so that you can go through it yourself. This was a consent to enter the apartment and retrieve Washington State University keys, which he had. So this was a consent, and there was no signature. I don't know why this wasn't signed, but what date was this? January 5th, 2023. So maybe he had those keys on him at the jail, so they didn't have to go and retrieve them at the house. I will be going over this again because there's a lot in here. And y'all probably already seen it. No new boom information, but this tells you all the items seized under the authority of this search warrant in this matter put no evidence of the criminal activity described in the application for search warrants in this matter, which criminal conduct happened in the state of Idaho. The Washington Law Enforcement Agency assisted the Idaho law enforcement agencies who were there investigating, prosecuting that matter. The items seized are not needed in Washington, but are needed in Idaho as part of the criminal investigation described in the application for the search warrant. And this is just saying that everything that they were able to gather from his apartment was turned over to Idaho. And this was Brian C. Kohberger. I specifically authorize any personal property remaining at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington, to be taken for the apartment by Ann Taylor, J. Loxton, Michael McCarthy, or Jennifer Jen Queen. And he signed it again, 1/19/2023. So there he's giving permission for his attorneys to be able to go in there and take anything that's still left. So all this stuff that people say, well, she went in there and gathered the TV. How do people know that? How do people even speak on this stuff? And this is the items seized from the resident and stored at WSU. And we've gone over all this stuff. I talked about it a while ago. But if I'm going to go over this again, I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. I want to play one more thing, and then I'll be turning this off. I thought this was quite interesting earlier. Hold on a second. I hate these stupid Austin, and you got to authorize certain things before you get into seeing what it is that you're trying to see. And I'll send y'all this too if you want to see it. This is on TikTok. And before I get out of here, I'm gonna say, Leslie, I hope that your husband get to feeling better. I really do. Um, he's watching me in the hospital. I appreciate that, Billy. I really do. Hope you get to feeling better. My mom had to deal with that issue, and she had to have her taken out. I hope that if they take yours out, it goes smoothly, everything goes well. But I want y'all to know this. I had a very authoritative voice earlier, and now it's kind of lowered and kind of chill. It's because I'm ending this. I want you to know that this case is not as dynamic as people are making it sound. If they're making it sound dynamic, if they're making it sound to the fact that he was a criminology major and this and that and the other, I challenge anybody, and once again, I challenge people to go enroll in school and become a criminal justice major. And you're going to see that most of the stuff that you see and you hear on these YouTubers' lives are totally false. The information is kind of there, but it's not real. It's not really being presented in the avenue that it's meant to be presented. And I'm sure that I get it wrong because it isn't. It isn't my expertise yet. I am just going to get my degree hopefully in June. I've been a therapist for 20 plus years, so I've worked in the criminal justice system all this time. Take care, Melissa. I hope your leg gets to feeling better. But as far as the criminal justice part of it, I suggest that you don't rely on other people for your information, such as reading the documents and understanding them, because one person's interpretation might be totally different than another person's. Like the document that I read about Ray tonight, it could be read tomorrow or the next day, and somebody's not wanting him to be that accurate with his description of what Special Agent Balance had to didn't have as far as what was needed, and they could make it look like Ray was inadequate. I mean, we're going to hear from Balance, and he's going to have a rebuttal, I'm sure. And it's going to go back and forth, back and forth. These experts, they can argue and argue and argue and argue. That's why they call them experts, so they can provide a sensible alternative to the attorneys. So try to, just a suggestion, to try to be open-minded on this case from here on out, because the innocence and guilt is not even on the table at this point. We're barely seeing all the document that if we were going to go back in time, all this would be in the preliminary, and then we're getting to the suppression, the limine, and then the jury selection is next. As I've told you guys, there's countless videos on all this information. If you really want to hear me talking about it, some of them are in my members only, but a lot of them are on the lives. You just have to dig a little bit, and you'll find exactly what I'm talking about today, because I've already talked about it. And I guess that's why it's so agitating, because when you talk about something and people don't even take the time to listen to what you're saying, kind of like I've done knife videos on my page. I've shown people being stabbed and how quickly the blood goes out of the body and all this stuff. Foot impressions, tire tracks, expert talking about this, talking about that. It's in there if you want to go look at it. If not, enjoy whoever you follow, and I'll continue doing what I do. You continue doing what you do. And we'll meet in the middle somewhere, I'm sure. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for giving me your time and your questions and your comments. Without you, there's not me. All right. Maestro, cue that music.